everyone, and welcome back to You're In Detention. And this is number 15. I can't believe that we've done 15 episodes of this now. And they've all been so different, haven't they? We've been really enjoying doing these, and also hearing feedback as well. It's been really, really good to know that people are listening to these. So thank you all for supporting us, and hopefully you're finding them useful. Today, we're talking about something that most people have never heard of, which is RSD, which is Rejection Sensitive Dysphoria. And if that sounds dramatic or confusing, don't worry, because we're starting right at the beginning.
And I'm here as the neurotypical representative. So because I don't experience RSD in the same way that Joe does, this is going to, I suppose, get us to share both sides. It's what it feels like for Joe and what it looks like from the outside.
Yeah, and just to give you an idea of how tiny a trigger can be, RSD can be set off by something as small as someone putting a full stop at the end of a text message. Not because the full stop is rude, but it's just how the neurodivergent brain reads it as something's wrong or you've upset someone. I'm like, oh, why haven't I got 6 smiling emojis at the end of that message? But RSD is basically when your brain reacts to rejection or criticism, or even the possibility of it, it reacts much bigger and faster than other people do, like neurotypical brains. And the key word there is just like the possibility. So most of the time, it's actually imagined rejection, completely fabricated, and nothing has actually happened, but your brain is just reacting like it did.
Yeah, and like with the example that you've just shared, Joe, from my perspective, I suppose it's a bit difficult to understand because for me, if someone were to put a full stop at the end of a message, for me it's a full stop. It's a bit of punctuation. So there's no emotion attached to it for me.
Yeah, that's true. And I think for neurodivergent people, the emotional meaning, it arrives real much faster than the logic does. But honestly, RSD is really common in ADHD, autism, and also ADHD, which is the combination of ADHD and autism. So basically, the neurodivergent brain, and it's not because neurodivergent people are dramatic or sensitive, although I do like to be dramatic sometimes, and I am sensitive sometimes, but it's because of how our nervous system processes threats.
Mm-hmm. So I suppose from the outside, it looks a bit like maybe you're taking things really personally or overreacting. But I think once you understand what's happening internally, it really does make a lot more sense.
Yeah, and do you know what? I think the part that really hits people is that RSD doesn't suddenly appear in adulthood. Like for most neurodivergent people, especially those that were undiagnosed as kids, like I was, it starts really early. So, by the age of 10, neurodivergent children have heard 20,000 more negative or corrective comments than a neurotypical child. 20,000. I know we've given that fact before, but when you think about 20,000, that's by the age of 10. I mean, you're not really conscious of what you were doing, and probably up until the age of 4 or 5. That's an awful lot, isn't it? And it's not because they're doing anything wrong, but because their behavior or things that drive their behavior is misunderstood. So you could be told you're not listening or not trying or being rude or disruptive or dramatic, and maybe talking too much or particularly overreacting, and then you get corrected for symptoms but not choices. So over time you learn to constantly scan the horizon for tone, anything that's just slightly off. So anything like silence or someone's facial expressions, some even little changes in someone's mood. And I mean, I've very often, I think, I know we're going to get my husband on this podcast because I'm always referring to him, because sometimes, I could be like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, why?" I'm like, "Well, you're really quiet. You've been quiet for a long time, or you looked at me funny, or anything and he's like, "No, I'm fine." But it's just I've got a heightened nervous system that it's almost trained to detect something's wrong, even if it isn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's for me probably the one thing. I didn't experience any of that as a child. So I'm neurotypical, and it was never a case that I wasn't. I didn't used to be corrected for things I couldn't control. I'd obviously
Mm,
get told off if I was naughty, but I was, hands up. I'd absolutely done something wrong.
mm,
But it was never for anything that I didn't feel was within my control. So I suppose for me, I've not had that not been developed for that, looking for it or understanding it. But
mm.
hearing what you're saying, it just, I can understand why RSD feels so much more intense.
Yeah, it's really, yeah, it almost feels like your body's just expecting that negativity or those criticisms, if you like. And so therefore it's almost used to receiving them. So it's always in a state of like heightened alert, if you like,
Yeah,
just waiting for it to come, even if it doesn't come. And like it said earlier on in this is the crazy thing about RSD is the fact that it can be completely imagined. So I can make something completely up in my head. So it's just, I mean, it's just really difficult to explain to people when they're not like, when they don't really understand. So, but yeah, I think that's why this podcast is just really important. And we've been waiting to do this subject for so long because it's just such a big subject to dissect, isn't it? But last night we were doing our academy week 7,
hmm,
and we were training our neurodivergent coaches on RSD and how that shows up and what that is. I mean, I was giving some examples myself, and I was asking my the trainees to coach me through some examples so that they could really understand how it plays up. And I think by the end of the 2 hours, I was exhausted because I was just sharing so much because it's so important. It's such an important topic
yeah,
to really learn about, isn't it?
yeah, definitely. And I think it's understanding that it's not just a response, is it? It's in you. It's in
Mm,
your nervous system.
yeah, it lives in there.
Yeah,
Um, but interestingly, most neurodivergent adults think their reactions are just normal because they've always had them. So they assume that everyone lies awake replaying conversations from like years ago. And they assume everyone feels ashamed like after oversharing. So it's just that assumption that everyone panics when someone replies differently. But honestly, I can be lying in bed thinking about something that I'd said 4 years ago, um, like 4 years, who's thinking about that? And I'll still run through the whole thing like it happened yesterday, and I'll guarantee the person that I'm thinking about, the conversation I had with, I guarantee they're not thinking about that. Like, it's crazy the amount of time that your brain will just hold on to that and go, "Oh, remember when you did that?" But it's just because like neurodivergent people have been told that they're like too sensitive or they overthink, and then they're blaming themselves instead of recognizing the pattern or being able to name it.
yeah. And I think from my side, it's not something I do. So I don't replay conversations
Mm.
from years ago. And I think that really it shows the real difference. It's just our brains work differently.
Hmm. It's really hard to explain like what RSD feels like. Um, it's it's like really like intense, almost like physical like pain where you can't really think about anything else and it's just replaying over and over in your head, and it feels like, I don't know, it feels a mixture between like shame and kind of certainty, like it's like you've disappointed someone, so you can't, it's really really hard to explain, but it's all consuming when you're in that kind of mode, and then if something distracts you when you're doing something else, your brain will be like, right, what was it I was thinking about, and then it goes straight back to that as soon as there's a quiet period. So um yeah, it's really hard to try and explain.
Yeah, and I think we touched on this as well in the academy session. I think there's similarities with like imposter syndrome,
Mm,
but they're not the same things at all. And I think that's another misconception. So for me, I could say, oh no, I know exactly what you mean. I have exactly the same, but mine wasn't and isn't, because mine would be related to, it would be a work based thing. And but it was just, oh, they won't think I'm good enough at this job, so they won't promote me. And that isn't at all the same as what RSD is.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? I think with anything in life, everyone might have a slight variation of something. So imposter syndrome is a good one, isn't it? Because like you say, imposter syndrome is all about I've just got a promotion, but actually I feel like I've really like blagged that promotion, and I'm now panicking that I can't do the job, and that's sitting with me. It's very much workplace based. It's very much career based, and it's very much it's a confidence kind of thing, and it's that realization that you are somewhere and you've got to work out how to do this job. Or like you say, when you get forward for promotion, you feel like, oh god, I'm never going to get that because they're going to think that I'm not good enough at doing it. But RSD is multifaceted. It shows up everywhere in your life. It's just not just work. I remember my boss once, I think he said, can we catch up in the morning like 8:30? Oh, I just want to speak to you before like the day kicks off. I'm like, yeah, okay, well you can tell me now then, can't you, what it is you want to say? But like he was out in London or something and we just couldn't talk. And then in the morning it was like, all right, mate, if you got them slides, could we just talk about them? And I'm like, right, literally in my head all night. I've been through every scenario. I'm like, wow, I can't think of anything that I've done. Um, but funny actually, because if I were to text him and say, right, I need to speak to you in the morning, you know, about something, and he'd be like, he would just call me immediately. So I know actually it wasn't just me that was like that, but that night, is a long night where I'll be up thinking of all the scenarios of what he wants to talk to me about. And actually, I think if you're leading a team, or you're married to a neurodivergent, or you're friends with a neurodivergent, or even business partners, whatever your relationship is, that thinking about that retention of information. So talking to that, asking that person to have a conversation, but not have a conversation at that point is like, my advice is don't do that, because that person will then create every possible scenario known to the existence of this
Yeah.
earth about what it is you want to talk to them about. So it's a real it's really something. If you're a neurotypical listening to this, it could be a big trigger for like RSD, because you're thinking, well, I had a conversation, what did I say, what were we talking about? When's the last time I spoke to that person? And all this stuff triggers off because your nervous system's gone into heightened mode, thinking there's some kind of negativity coming.
Yeah. And I think that's the point that you're making. I think it's not a time bound thing. So when we've talked about something different, or if I felt particularly sensitive about something that somebody said to me, that's time bound. It's lasted for a day or 2 days, or a week. Whereas RSD, it's that's it's there. It's
Yeah.
not well, it will just spike up today. And I think it's for us, I mean, me and you have worked through like how we communicate with each other.
Mm.
So I wouldn't dream of sending you a one word text or ending something with a full stop.
Yeah.
Um and things like that, but because it's not a time bound, or Joe was just feeling a bit sensitive that day.
Mhm. Exactly. I know we've talked about it as well, that it's because it's a lot of it's imagined. It's usually triggered by something, but then you kind of play that scenario through like in your head. And I know, um as a bit of an example to share when you've had a few bad days with like technology, when we've been setting up messy minds, believe me, there's been some blue language used. Well, we've been trying to get the technology set up for messy minds, but mostly by Kerry, obviously, because I am angelic and I would never use that language. But however, I kind of had a few days where I would phone up Kerry on Teams and I'd be like, "You're right." Now, usually Kerry's like, "Hi, how's it going?" Like radiating positivity. And I think for like 2 days I would phone and she'd be like, "Right, yeah, yeah," like literally just really just not yourself, were you? And I was thinking, right, well, what is it that I've done that's made her like that? So immediately it's me. How long did it take me to talk to you? Probably about what, 48 hours?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
And I
oh,
think for me, I knew I was in a bad mood. My husband trusts everyone, knew I was in a bad mood. I think Microsoft, everyone that I was dealing with knew I wasn't happy with what was happening. And it just felt, for me, I tend to, if I'm not having a good time, well, you'll see it all over my face. But I'm quite vocal about it, and some of the more unhelpful language. But I think because we spoke, and I think we were on Teams, and you just looked at me and you went, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "No." With the all the IT was set up, blah, and it just all came spilling out, and you were like, "Oh," and I think for you were like, "Oh, I didn't think you wanted to work with me anymore." I'm like, and for me, I think because I was so in myself, being
yeah,
furious Kerry, I don't do that often, but I think because I was so in myself, and then when I sat and thought about it afterwards, I was like, oh, because we'd talked about RSD, and we've talked about it a lot more since.
yeah,
Not just linked to that, but like talking it through, understanding it, and then you're like, oh wow.
yeah.
But I'm glad it. I'm glad after 48 hours, and it wasn't any longer than that, you did front up and say, "Are you okay?"
Yeah, because it did help because you kind of were able to go, I'll have a complete vent about it. And then you kind of moved on. And then it was almost helpful for you because it kind of dug you out of this
Yeah,
rabbit hole. But for me, I was able to talk about it and ascertain what was bothering you. But it's funny because it's just that heightened, like just picking up things. I'm like, well, normally you'd say that, but you didn't say that. And um, yeah, it's so strange, isn't it? How you can, I mean, if IT was bothering me, you'd know about it instantly. Like I wouldn't stop talking about how annoying it was and inefficient it was and how much of a waste of time it is because I get so frustrated by things like that immediately. And you're quietly actually trying to sort it out whilst getting more and more frustrated with it. But, it's just different minds working together, isn't it? And understanding how they show up then when they're frustrated
yeah.
and then what the other one's thinking while you're getting frustrated. Well, what am I thinking? I'm thinking, oh, Kerry's sick of me, my oversharing ADHD brain.
Never, 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 never.
But it is a good scenario to just try and show that, even though it's how close we are, you can still have these little moments where you think,
Yeah.
oh, have I done something to upset you? And actually, it's Microsoft. I mean, our friend Copilot occasionally upsets me, but he knows about it immediately.
I love when we're working together and you screen share because we were talking about this earlier. I'm super polite if I use Copilot for anything. So I quite often ask Copilot questions, and I'm always like, please, can you tell me this? Thank you ever so much. That was really helpful. I am super on it with all of my pleases and thank yous, and you give it a good old telling off. I think I saw one this morning. No, absolutely not. And it almost comes back and apologises to you. It really makes me laugh.
He's thinking, yeah, I need to get paid more to be working on this computer. It's like the zero patience, isn't it? And it's like, God, you just like why can't you understand what I'm thinking? Why can't you just it's just that, yeah, it's that immediate frustration. And I'm
Yeah,
like, absolutely not what you're talking about. It's absolutely crazy. I mean, how we've got from RSD onto Copilot. We're really good at doing this. I think last time we were talking about relationships and we got onto Pepsi Max, and hey, other AI is available. Um, but yeah, it is so linked, isn't it?
yeah,
All of the neurodivergent thinking brain. So, um, one of the interesting things, it's a really important part of our Messy Minds program.
yeah,
Because RSD, it's interesting because I've coached, well, many people now through the Making Sense of Yourself program, and almost all of them have said when we do this session on RSD, well, firstly, a lot of people don't know about it, even though neurodivergent. But secondly, the amount of people that have said to me, "Well, I don't suffer from RSD at all, so no problem. Like, we could skip this week." And we don't. And the reason we don't is because because you can't necessarily see yourself when it's playing in. I mean, one of the ladies that I'd coached over the summer had said that we'd had that exact conversation. She said, "Oh, I don't think I really suffer much from RSD." And then we worked through it, and we were really kind of getting deep into what RSD is and where it shows up and how it shows up and how you feel and like what you can do when it does show up. But yeah, it's amazing how she then said at the end of the session, well, I get RSD all the time. And it is like, oh gosh, it's amazing that you can't name the feeling because you just think that that's you because you've been like that.
yeah,
You've always been like that. So you think, oh, I'm just a sensitive person. But this is why it is so important that when we are doing coaching,
mhm,
neurodivergent coaching is completely different from general coaching or business coaching. A general coach might be brilliant, but neurodivergent coaching needs a totally different skill set. You cannot coach neurodivergent people the same way as you coach neurotypical people because it doesn't work. And it can sometimes actually make things worse. And working through like processes and things like that, it's all very well, but a neurodivergent coach has to understand things like RSD and emotional regulation and dysregulation, um, overwhelm, masking, executive functioning, like how the nervous system works and how it processes threats. Like, so without understanding, it's very easy to misread the client or accidentally even make them feel shamed.
mhm,
So we're not like fixing RSD, we're helping people understand what their brain is doing and why it reacts that way, and how to like separate old kind of childhood danger and feedback and things like that and signals to what's actually happening now. So we will help build like kinder interpretation and find like what works for their nervous system, because of course
mhm,
everyone's different, but most neurodivergent adults have never had the space where like your reactions are not like dismissed as overthinking or just being too sensitive. So coaching does give them that place where they can actually talk about this without feeling any shame. But if a neurodivergent person is asking for help, they really do need help. And we've talked before about the suicide rates in neurodivergence. It is significantly higher, particularly women when they get into menopause and stuff like that. It's
mhm.
really important that people get the right help. Now, coaching is not therapy. Coaching is coaching. It's helping people move forward. But usually, when people understand themselves a little bit better, then they can move forward. And it just gives them that confidence to like name things that are happening to them, such as RSD,
Yeah,
and having coping strategies to be able to confidently dismiss some of the thoughts that they're having, because they are actually, it's really exhausting.
yeah.
You-
And from like I think from the neurotypical side, I mean, I can really see the difference. So I've had coaching, as you know, Joe, but this coaching, it's not about pushing people harder or giving them hacks for work or things like that. It's understanding how their brain works and helping them feel safe enough to make changes, helping them make seen, be feel seen. And I mean, one example you had there with your coaching over the summer, where you were like, oh, and they shared that they didn't have RSD, didn't suffer from RSD. But you think, well, actually, if somebody's been told forever that they're just sensitive,
Mm.
and then they can start unpacking it, actually, that's when they get the true value of it, and they can really start to work through what can help them cope with that, and make it all so much more manageable. So it's entirely different.
Yeah, I think it's RSD can also be thinking that everyone just like tolerates you,
Mhm.
and they don't actually like you, but they just tolerate you. And I think that comes from, a bit of the oversharing, because I mean, if I ever joined a work call early and I was like, that was very rare. If someone joined late, should we say, and there was a couple of minutes to fill, oh, I'd fill it. I'd fill it, and I would be like amusing everyone, entertaining everyone for 2 minutes because there's a gap. I was bored. I'd fill it, and then afterwards I'd be like, "Ugh." but actually, that's just how I am. That's how I like to be. And but really recently, at my employer that we've just left, or our employer that we've just left, we had a round of redundancies, and I mean, this is just such a good example of the absolute worst situation for me that I could have possibly been in. So when redundancies happen, the company will select, or the employees will select, people to be employee representatives. So there was a we needed two representatives from our area, and people were nominating themselves, volunteering to be reps,
Mhm.
and there is no way on this earth I would have volunteered to be a rep, because what happened then is people then had to vote for a shortlist, of people that had got the most nominations to then become the employee rep. And I got contacted by HR, not for the wrong reasons, but I got contacted by HR to say that I had been nominated about 10 times by different people. So I hadn't volunteered, but then I found myself in this
Mhm.
process where I was then going to be like, people were then going to vote for me or not for me, or for other people to be a rep. And like, oh, I'd been in that situation with ADHD and thinking, right, well, this is going to validate now that people are they just tolerate me. They don't really like me. They just put up with me. And because having ADHD can make you sometimes outspoken and vocal, particularly in unfair situations. So, and you just have so little patience. You just want to get things done. So sometimes you think, okay, yeah, people think I'm probably a bit edgy. But it was the week or so. I think it was a week where people
Oh,
could
it was at
vote,
least a week.
maybe longer than that.
Mhm.
Oh, the conversations that were going on in my head, it was just awful, because I thought, right, this is just going to validate after all this time that people are just like absolutely just tolerating me. But I think then when the results were in, and I got an email saying, well, you've been voted in as a rep. Like, um, it was kind of, I just didn't know how to feel, because it kind of validated the fact that what I was saying had really, it wasn't correct. So all the tale in my head wasn't the truth.
Yeah.
Either that, or people think I'm so outspoken that I won't be afraid to kind of raise issues, which it could have been that. But that, just that process for me, and I don't think anyone really appreciates that a neurodivergent going through that process
Mhm.
of being out there. Um, as much as I was extremely confident, and I am a confident individual, but that that was a whole new layer of like, it could have been absolute rejection. And if I hadn't have been voted in, I'd have been thinking, right, okay, well, I've been here 24 years, actually, no one likes me, so I'll just leave anyway. But that's the sort of thing that could have resulted in. Oh, that was stress.
I'm not surprised. And I mean, I remember at the time, because we used to speak a lot. And I remember talking to you before people were chosen. I was like, "Are you going to do it?" Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I thought, there was a bit of me that thought, there's loads of people going to nominate you. Loads. Um, and then it was, for me, watching it from the outside, because I knew you, there was, to me, it was a no brainer. But I think for you, I can't imagine having those feelings and having to wait that period of time, because it feels
Yeah.
almost, I suppose from my perspective, it feels a bit like a popularity contest, doesn't it? You know, who's going
Yeah.
to be popular guys who get picked for the special task.
Yeah.
I think anyone, truly knew what was going to be involved, but who was going to be picked. But yeah, and I think also it's unvalidated your feelings that, well, I'm not going to be picked, I'm not going to be chosen, and I'm going to have to realize that nobody likes me, nobody values me. So I like to think that the result at the end unvalidated those negative thoughts. And again, it's perceived, isn't it? Because there hadn't been a rejection. I think you were preempting what you thought was the inevitable.
Yeah. And even to be fair, even then when I do get voted in, I'm like, well, people voted me because they think I'm going to go and stand up for people. Like, so it doesn't matter. It almost doesn't validate it, because in my head, I'll find another reason why I'm in that room. And actually, it's interesting because during that time, it was a very stressful time. It was a very emotional time. And I think the level of work that goes alongside with your day job, everyone's like, "Oh, how you finding the work?" Oh, I don't bother about that. Like, I absolutely soak up any kind of crisis or difficult situation, and actually, it's it's been able to do that and represent everyone. But I think no matter how much my feelings are unvalidated, as you say, and proven wrong, I'll find another theory. I'll find another theory. So it's really, yeah, it's actually exhausted. But that is that was one example where I thought, this is the world of stress, coupled with impatience and coupled with like, oh, this is just a cringeful situation. But
Yeah.
you know, there we are. And I think it's weird because when I did VR while still being a rep, I remember like blurting it out when I was on a webinar once, and I just literally blurted it out. And I bet people thought, "Oh, thanks for just dropping your like employee rep." So then again, I'm thinking that, but I couldn't. I was quite emotional at saying it because obviously, as you know, I'd been at the organisation for like 24 years.
Yeah.
Um, and so I was quite emotional to say it. So I'd kind of said it right at the end, and I just blurted it out and then moved on because I thought I can't be dwelling on that because it was quite emotional. But then I was thinking, well, everyone's just going to think I've just left my post that people had voted me. But I mean, honestly, it's a continuation. It never stopped. But it doesn't stop you doing your job. It doesn't stop you being completely effective. And sometimes, as you know, like there's no there's no downside to me having ADHD in my corporate role. There's only upsides to it. But emotionally, internally, you do have other battles that you can deal with that no one sees. And I think that's important for people to know.
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
Oh,
And I think it's it's the understanding. I think the examples are super useful, because I think you've got from, I think I can put myself in a scenario and think, okay, well, this is how I would think and this is what I would do.
mm,
Um, if I had been nominated for employee rep, let's just say I wasn't, Joe. But if I'd have been nominated for it and hadn't got it, I'd have just taken my ball and gone off and played elsewhere. That would have been it.
yeah.
Whatever, guys. Um, but it wouldn't have sat with me. It wouldn't have stayed with me.
Yeah.
But equally, I think if I'd have got in, I'd have been like, oh, look at me, won the popularity contest. I'm brilliant. Everyone loves me. Whereas for you, the reaction's different. It's like, well, okay, no, they've done it because of a different reason.
Yeah, yeah.
I think me understanding that and other people understanding that, I speak to people in an entirely different way, because
Mm,
I'm a lot more mindful now. Um, not just you, and not just if I think someone may be neurodivergent. I am a lot more focused on my words and actions,
Mm.
and having a lot more thought actually about how it might be received. Um,
Yeah, it's true. So yeah, I think, yeah, like you say, you just think, okay, you just move on to the next reason, don't you? So people think, okay, well, people must think I'm a shrewd negotiator then, so that's why I'm in the room, or like I'm not afraid to talk to people in senior positions, because I'm not. And I think, like you say, you start to do that, and actually there's very much reasons why I probably would have been doing that in the first place. So I think it's just, yeah, so that, yeah, it's just the truth versus tale, isn't it? And that's the biggest thing. And that's definitely something that we talk about a lot in our coaching program. And we've been obviously doing some heavy training with our academy trainees. But if you're a neurotypical, like Kerry, listening to this, like the most important thing to understand about RSD is that neurodivergent people don't choose these reactions, and they're not being dramatic. And also, I think one of the worst things is we're just definitely not trying to make things about us. So we're not reading into these things on purpose, but our brain genuinely thinks something is wrong, even when nothing has happened. They'll just create this like story. So short messages, changes in tone, things like that will just feel like rejection. And it's not because of you, but years of being corrected or misunderstood, and our brain is just filling in the gaps. It's just filling in the gaps, and it's just filling them with like danger signals that you've upset someone. And something that's really important to know is, don't expect a neurodivergent person to tell you what's bothering them the first time you ask, because most hate conflict, and also we won't want to upset anyone. So I think I mean, if someone wants to know what's wrong with me, if something is wrong with me, they need to ask me at least 4 or 5 times. And then I'll still be like, I'll have to be like on the verge of anger before I'll even say anything. It's eating me up so much that it's physically painful. And then it just all blurts out.
mhm.
And so you really, when you hear someone saying I'm fine, doesn't mean you say, oh, are you sure you're fine, when there's nothing wrong with them? Because sometimes there isn't. But it does take it does take them to know that you're not going to be angry or defensive or annoyed when we open up to you and tell you what it is that's wrong, because that just gives us even more shame, and then we're just less likely to talk to you. I think if you ask my parents, they would tell you that I've never once said I've got any problems. I've never told them about anything, because I've just deal with it myself. And so therefore people think that you don't have any issues, or you're like really independent, which, yeah, okay, that I am an independent person, like fiercely, but it doesn't mean that I don't have any emotions. It doesn't mean I don't have any problems. So I think that creating that environment where I can talk to you about what is bothering me without you being immediately annoyed. If you get immediately annoyed, I'll probably never tell you anything again, or I'll be less likely to, because I'll think, what are going to be the consequences of that?
Mhm.
And then start to just change the story. So it's you've got to know that it's safe to talk about something, because if someone reacts in a negative way when you talk about it, and that's normal, because sometimes it can be really like upsetting what someone's saying to you, or it can be about someone close to you that's upset them, so it's a kind of natural reaction. But if you don't allow that kind of space before you and talk it through rather than reacting, you'll find that the neurodivergent will just lie to you. They just won't tell you anything, or they'll just say whatever you want to hear, because we're people pleasers and we don't want the conflict. So just bear that in mind, and I think just keeping calm in those situations, because when a neurodivergent person's about to tell you something, they are up here with emotion, like really really high, really really on edge, and that trying to channel that like anger, because it can really manifest as coming out and blurting out and being angry, and then you can't get your point across what is actually wrong. So it's very, very delicate situation, but just be aware of some of those things because it can really help diffuse that situation.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also not being dismissive. So I think if I say you're all right and you're like, not really because, like, oh, don't be silly. No,
Yeah.
no, you're imagining it. Again, I think it's that giving you the opportunity. This is how I feel. This is why I feel this, and we can talk about it, but not being
Yeah.
dismissive. And I think a lot of this from a neurotypical side. So it genuinely wouldn't occur to me if you'd not explained it. And it's things like now I'm a lot more mindful with what us working together with other people that I'm working with, regardless, if I send a short message, if I'm quiet, I'm a lot more mindful about it, how that might come across. And making sure that you can see that there's, or anybody can see there's no hidden meaning in it. Because I think understanding how you've explained it, how neurodivergent people might interpret those moments, that is a huge eye opener. Huge eye
Mm.
opener, because when you say RSD to start off with, I think you get so many people like, oh, okay, it's this, or yeah, I've felt like that before. Yes, you may have had similar feelings at a point in time, but it's not that, as I said before, it's not that constant. So I think understanding it's how your brain's been trained for years, and there's that expectation that something's going to be wrong.
Mm.
And I think working through, there's a huge part obviously in our coaching program of being able to work through that and what does it look like, feel like, and giving tools, I suppose, to help cope with it and make it a lot easier to deal with moving forward.
Mm. I think that is a key part. It's definitely a key part, and it
Yeah,
does highlight the difference between the neurodivergent coaching and the general coach,
yeah,
because it's not necessarily just a specific topic, is it? It's like, okay, we're going to focus on this, and actually, again, people are, oh no, I don't need to focus on that. It's fine. I'm absolutely fine. Like, okay, so let's take the mask off for a minute and let's really look at what it is, and then let's talk
yeah,
about where it might be showing up. And all of a sudden, you're like, oh, okay. So yeah, I really hope that this episode, because it is a massive topic,
hmm,
I really hope this episode, firstly, helps people understand that what they're dealing with and why they think a certain way, but also for neurotypicals listening to this. And I really hope there are some, because if you're a neurodivergent listening to this podcast and you live with a neurotypical, ask them to watch it. Like, again, it's not just about you, it's about them understanding you and how you work. And it's all about learning how we kind of best can live together, work together, lead teams, be in a team, or be part of a team. All of these things every day, the more we understand about each other, the better. But hopefully this has been helpful. It's definitely been one of the bigger and most emotional topics I think we've covered in the podcast. And yeah, hopefully you will be able to name it when this happens to you and understand it. But again, it's not alone. If you want help, have a look. We'll put the link to our program in the description, and it very much makes a part of it. And yes, it's definitely something that will help you in life, and it's definitely helped me. Doesn't mean it doesn't show up, but we can definitely name it and understand it a little bit better.
yeah.
So thank you everyone for watching. You've been in detention today. So I mean, how many times now we've been in detention? 15. So we're getting somewhat close to what I might have been in a school term. But yeah, we'll be back next week with some more topics that you'll want to listen to and get great information from. But thank you for listening. Don't forget, if you've liked this episode, please share it with your friends. Please give us a thumbs up and subscribe. And if you don't want to watch it on YouTube, you can head to Spotify and search for us there, and you can listen to it, download it, listen to it in the car if you prefer to do that kind of thing, because not everyone wants to watch it visually. So thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next week.